Late 1800s, the gold rush in Alaska was in full swing, and Jack London, the young writer, made this trip. He traveled the long trail to the Yukon and suffered all the miseries and survived it. He didn't get rich, but he certainly understood the suffering and the exhaustion of the long trail, the 18-day hikes, and the desire at the end of a long day to just have a little shut-eye, a night's peace, a rest, and what that was worth to a man who was suffering. And so Jack London wrote a story called The Man with the Gash. And in this story, on this long trail, hundreds of miles in both directions, and in the middle of this you've got nothing but pure wilderness and hundreds of miles in both directions. And here sits this cabin on the trail. And this cabin was where it was taken over by a squatter by the name of Jacob Kent, and he basically had a monopoly. There was nowhere else anyone could stay, and so people would come there. They'd be exhausted. They'd be miserable. They'd be all they wanted was a night's sleep, peace, a break from the cold, from the bugs, and so Jacob would basically charge high rates. He would squeeze these miners for their gold dust. He would not only take what he had coming, but when he weighed it out, he'd steal the dead weight also. And so he was known as sort of a highway robber or a pirate in this barren stretches, who would get rich. He was getting rich because he would have anywhere from half a dozen to even 24 travelers a night coming through, and every one of them he'd charge their gold dust in order to stay there. And so Jacob Kent was getting rich. He was getting rich. The problem, though, is that he was dangerously obsessed with his riches. Not only that, he was in a remote location, and everybody disliked him because he was squeezing and ripping them all off. And so Jacob Kent because he had a dangerous obsession. The problem with obsession is that it permeates us. It fills our spirit and our subconscious when we become obsessed with something, and it changes our psychology. And that's what happened to Jacob Kent. He became so permeated and filled with lust for riches that he also developed a fear of loss, which comes with wealth. And so here Jacob Kent is in a vulnerable location. He's isolated with a lot of gold dust, and he would have nightmares every night about his fears, which were that one of these characters in his dreams, these thieves, was actually the manifestation of a real person, which he believed that eventually was someone who wanted to steal his gold. Some might call it superstition, but this is what Jacob Kent believed. Now, Jack London writes, talking about his gold sack, because one day Jacob Kent there was no travelers there at the moment, and he was weighing his gold on his scales. And London writes, "That sack with its glittering yellow treasure, heaven and hell lay within its slender mouth." And so London points out the stakes in here is that man is Jacob Kent is facing heaven or hell, and he's obsessed with this gold, and he's tortured by a constant fear of theft. In fact, he believed in these omens of thought transference. Now, here's how London describes this obsession. He writes, "Mammon had laid hot fingers on his heart," and so that's a biblical allusion where the Bible says God, you cannot serve God and mammon. Jacob Kent chose mammon. So by doing that, he chose fear, and he chose hell, and he was tormented day and night over his decisions. He lived fear. He was known for being a miserable person, and he was generally disliked by all travelers who came to his. Not only did he extract them and squeeze them for the gold, but he was unhospitable. He didn't do anything to help them. He made them stack the firewood. He made them get the water. They had to do everything. Mammon had laid hot fingers on his heart, as Lennon said. And then one day, when he was alone, he was weighing that gold on his scales, and suddenly he was surprised from behind. He had gotten carried away. Time had slipped by, and he was surprised. And there was a traveler had had entered behind him. And Kent was so obsessed with his gold that he hadn't even heard a traveler enter his cabin. And he turned around, and he was shocked because it was the man with the gash, the very man who was the leader of those who robbed him in his dreams. And Jacob Kent, he was literally shocked. He was staring at this hideous gash on the man's face in the most obvious show of disgust and horror and fascination all at the same time. And this really offended the man with the gash, who unleashes a tirade of profanity at Jacob Kent for staring at his gash like that. And Kent was at this point. Kent had his shotgun handy, and actually Lennon writes that he yearned to grab that shotgun and kill the man with the gash right then and there. So Jacob Kent has become somewhat demented. He actually yearns to use that shotgun on the man with the gash, just an innocent traveler coming by. And Jacob Kent yearns to shoot him. So Kent's got some problems, maybe from too much isolation. But at the same time, he doesn't do it. And the reason he doesn't do it is because he's so fascinated that this man in his dreams has now shown up in his cabin. And Kent is sitting there, sweat is pouring off him, and he's shaking. He's shaking. And now the man with the gash has just unleashed a stream of profanities at him. And then, since Kent doesn't shoot him, the man with the gash goes from profanities to giving orders. Ordering Jacob Kent to get that firewood, go get water, make him happy, and then the man with the gash even threatens him. And Kent still doesn't pull out his shotgun. He doesn't go for the shotgun. Kent can't believe his own reactions. He's shocked because here he is, actually doing chores, actually serving his guests. He's never done this before, but he's being treated like a servant and master, and he's being treated like the servant by the master, the man with the gash. And that's ironic because when the Bible says you cannot serve two masters. You can serve God or mammon. Masters. And here it is, Jacob Kent chose mammon, and now the man with the gash has shown up acting like a master, ordering him around, threatening him in this remote location. So that night, what happened was Jacob Kent went to sleep. Well, actually, he didn't intend to go to sleep. He actually He was laying in his bed with his shotgun, and he was with his muzzle loader, and he was planning. His plan was to stay, because normally he would always be hiding his gold here, hiding it there. But now the man with the gash had shown up, surprised him, and knew he had the gold, and he hadn't been able to hide it because he was under observation, and so his plan was to stay up all night. And that didn't happen because he fell asleep. He eventually fell asleep. Now, under great stress, we all have weaknesses. We all have, as humans, we all have our weaknesses. And Jacob Kent had a weakness, which was that he was a sleepwalker. And here he was under total exhaustion. He had fallen asleep. He's also under great stress, haunted in his dreams, and now the man with the gash has shown up. Jacob Kent sleptwalked that very night. He sleptwalked, and in his half awake, half asleep state, he gets out his ammo box, and he he loads his his muzzle loader with a double load. He just packs that black powder down, and then he goes back to sleep. And all of this he does, obviously sleepwalking, not really conscious, but he does it perfectly. And he puts his ammo box back where he got the black powder, and goes back to sleep, comforted, I guess able to sleep better because he had, his gun with a double load. And then in the morning, he wakes up before the man with the gash, and like a demented lunatic, he slips a noose around the sleeping man's neck, the man with the gash. And then he throws that rope over a crossbeam, and he pulls it down, and he lifts the man with the gash. The man with the gash is sleeping, and he's suddenly like this. Personally, I've been attacked in my sleep before, and it's a shocking thing to wake up when you were peacefully sleeping, and all of a sudden you're coming out of your sleep literally under full attack. It's quite eye-opening. So anyway, Jacob Kent has the here he is awake, and suddenly he's being hung, and not only that, Jacob can't pull him. The man with the gash is so big that Jacob Kent's having trouble pulling him up enough, but he's choking him, and so he's also got his rifle, his muzzle loader, right in his face, threatening him. Where is it? And the man with the gash says, what? He pretends like he doesn't know anything about it. He says he doesn't know where the gold is. So Jacob Kent threatens him. He says, I'll give you till noon. What? And then he says, you'll be hitting the brimstone trail. So Jacob Kent is just telling him straight out, you better give it to me by noon, or give me that gold back by noon, or I'm going to send you to hell. You're going to hit the brimstone trail. So he's very serious here. Well, Jacob Kent means what he says, and he pulls the trigger. When he realizes that somebody is a far distant down the trail, someone's coming, and so Jacob Kent, the man with the gash, tries to roll away. Jacob Kent fires right at him, close range shot, right at the man with the gash. But what happens is the gun backfires, and it blasts and kills Jacob Kent. So here's this man obsessed with gold. He's killing his visitor, and now he's gotten himself killed. And so the man with the gash comes out, and what he sees is gold dust pouring out of that gun. And he realizes that what happened was the man with the gash had put a double load of gold into his gun. So what had happened is, obviously, the man he had stowed away his gold dust in his ammo box, and in his sleep state, he had used that gold dust instead of black powder. So this is a story of dangerous obsession. What happens when we choose we choose what we focus on, what we concentrate on, and it determines our destiny. And Jacob Kent had chosen that mammon above everything, above his fellow man. And ironically, it had backfired on him in the end. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button if you like this kind of thing. Subscribe. It's a big help to me, and it's free. Thanks for watching.